Hello everyone, once again welcome to Innovative English Learning. You can also watch this video in Urdu from the playlist. Today we are going to talk about another very important modal auxiliary, that is the uses of must and ought to. Okay, so in this video we'll talk about the uses and the structures of ought to and must. Now, uses of must. Where do we use must? The first one is we use must to say we are sure about something. So if you are sure about something, we use must. The structures, there are two structures. First we have the subject, then must, and then first form, and then the object. Another way is subject must be plus ing form, okay, and then the object. For example, you have been traveling all day. You must be tired. So I'm sure about his tiredness. For example, if somebody has traveled a lot, so I say you must be tired. Ali knows much about movies. He must be watching many movies. Okay, so for example, if he knows much about movies, definitely he must be watching many movies. Your exams are around. You must be studying hard. Okay, so that is how we can use it in two different structures. One is with must plus first form, and one is with must plus be plus ing form. Okay, next we use must or have to say that it is necessary to do something. Okay, so for example, oh, it's too late, I must go, or I have to go. You are ill, you must go to the doctor, or you have to go to the doctor. Do not tell it anyone, you must keep it a secret. Now, what's the difference between must and have to? Remember, must is preferred when there are personal feelings, while in the rest of the cases, have to is preferred. For example, she is really a nice person, you must meet her. Now here it involves personal feelings, that she's nice, so that's why you must meet her. But you say you cannot turn right here, you have to turn left, because I'm only describing facts here, I'm not describing my personal feelings here. So that is why I say you have to turn left. Okay, I do not say you must turn left. So must, the difference between must and have to is only involvement of personal feelings. Must is also used to order someone when one has an authority. For example, if there is a boss or someone with an authority, so he can also use must to order his subordinates. Okay, for example, you must complete this work by tomorrow. So if the boss is ordering his subordinates, so he says you must complete this work. Students must submit their assignments till Friday. Normally the teachers, they order the students to submit the assignment, so here again must can be used. You must come to the class on time, or I'll mark you absent. Again, the teacher has an authority, so that's why he can use must. Negative structure. How to use must in a negative structure? So we have the subject, then we have must, then not. Okay, so we do not introduce any other word except not, and then first form, and then the object. For example, your exam is around, you must not waste your time. You must not disrespect your elders. We must not tell a lie. You must not tell it anybody. You must keep it a secret. Okay, so that is how we can use it in negative structure. There is an activity for you to practice must or must not. I must not lose weight, or I must lose weight. I'm too fat. So if I am fat, I must lose weight. So here the correct option is must. I must or mustn't be late for the school. Definitely, I must not be late for the school. The kids must or mustn't sleep regularly to grow healthy. Okay, the correct option is must. The kids must sleep regularly to grow healthy. Find the correct option in the rest of the sentence to practice the structure. Next, we have complete the following class rules with must or must not. You must be quiet when someone else is speaking. So it's a rule that you must be quiet when someone else is speaking. You must listen to the teacher. You must arrive in class on time. You must not eat in class. Okay, fill the rest of the blanks yourself so that you may practice the. Next we have the uses of ought to. So Here we'll talk about the uses and the structures for ought to. It is used to say what is the right thing to do, or we use ought to when talking about things which are desired or ideal. So here we use ought to when we think that something is right, or when we desire something or something is ideal. So for that we use ought to. For example, they ought to apologize. Now here, for example, if they were on the wrong side, it was the ideal thing or it was the right thing to apologize. So they ought to apologize. They ought to have apologized, but they did not. Such things ought to happen. Such things means that something good happened. So we say that such things ought to happen, that is ideal or that is desired. Next we have ought to is used to say that what you expect or would you like to happen. Okay, so when we expect something or when we like something to happen, we also use ought to. For example, children ought to learn reading by the age of 7. So it is expected from children that they ought to learn reading by the age of 7. Nurses ought to take care of patients. So it is definitely expected from nurses to take care of patients. So we say nurses ought to take care of patients. Teachers ought to teach good manners to students. So definitely it is expected from teachers to teach good manners to students. So we say teachers ought to teach good manners to students. Ought to is used to say what you advise or recommend. So when we recommend something, when we advise something, we also use ought to. For example, we ought to leave now. So for example, we are late and we are advising someone that we ought to leave now. This is delicious. You ought to try some. So I'm recommending something to someone that it is delicious and you ought to try some. You ought to attend the meeting. It is necessary. Again, I'm recommending the meeting to someone that it is necessary. That is why you ought to attend the meeting. Okay, so that is how we use it in this structure. We use ought to plus have plus third form to talk about things that were desired or ideal in the past but which did not happen. So it means it can express regret. When we regret something, when something happened and it was against the expectations, so we are regretting that, there we can also use ought, but the structure is different. It is followed by have and then third form. For example, you ought to have attended the meeting. It means that you did not attend the meeting, and now I'm telling you that you ought to have attended it because it was mandatory. Okay, again, you ought to have eaten the dish. It means you did not eat it, and I say you ought to have eaten the dish because it was really delicious. So that is how we can use ought to with this structure. Difference between ought to and should. Ought to and should are similar in meaning. Should is more common than ought to. Ought to is more formal than should. In normal language, we normally prefer should, but in formal conversation, we normally prefer ought to. For example, there ought to be more street lights here means the same as there should be more street lights here. So in formal conversation, we prefer ought to, while in normal conversation, we use should. Negative of ought to. The negative is formed by adding not after ought not to. It can be contracted to oughtn't to. We don't use don't or does not, did not with ought to. Okay, so that is very simple. We ought not to get late. They ought not to leave the class. But remember, the negative of ought to is not very common. We usually use should not or shouldn't instead. So we normally do not use negative of ought to. Okay, instead of that, we normally prefer should not or shouldn't. Thank you for watching Innovative English Learning. I hope you would have learned many things about the uses of modal auxiliaries, especially must and ought to in this video. For more such videos, subscribe our channel Innovative English Learning and share it with your friends. Take care of yourself.